leave in the evening or even Saturday morning. But still, that's just a in and out quick, no one gets hurt kind of thing. I mean, just don't let them see you and you'll be fine.
No one gets hurt as a figure of speech only.
Yeah, well, no, exactly. I mean, that's the in and out quick, no one gets hurt is just a way to say, stop worrying about it. You're going to go down. Just make sure you know how to drag yourself. Yeah, it is. It is certainly.
It was, I had 6 hours of layover yesterday. And it took 13 hours to come back from Helena, which was 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. Helena time to 8 p.m. Helena time.
Wow, if all the cops were on vacation, you could actually get into a 6-speed clickety-click car and drive it faster.
Well, I certainly feel like I've been hit by a truck this morning.
I gather.
So
long layovers actually are harder on me than insanely intense connecting flights. I mean, I've run through airports and then finally got there. But if any time I think there was like a 4 or 6 hour layover, it's as if I lost all my momentum, and it all of a sudden it just took the wind out of my sails.
Well, we have 4 watchers this morning, so I guess we better get going.
Excellent.
Jordan, could you, when we do each of Diane's sections, just hold it up, because I keep having problems with it with the virtual background. And so we're on page 7. I'm sorry. Is it page 22?
88.
Oh, it's 88. Oh,
I think crawling. I think we did rebirth last. If I put mine.
Oh, okay. No, it's newborn. We're at newborn.
Right after crawling. I must have left my bookmark where we were, not where we're going. Yeah.
All right. So it's 8:07 in the East. Do you know where your children are? This morning, we're going to continue with our readings from The Unseen Partner by Diane Croft, and A Mystical Path Less Traveled by Dr. Jerry Wright. And we are on page 90 now of Diane's book, and Jordan's going to show you the picture. This segment is called Newborn. And the way Diane puts her book together is first with a poem that she was given numinously about 25 years ago during a 3-year experience. And then she has a photo or an image that expresses this particular thought that she's offering. And then she has a quote, a famous quote, and finally a commentary. And so don't mind me, I have spent 2 days traveling to spend 1 day in Helena. Okay, that's good, Jordan.
Okay. Do you want me to keep it up, or you want to just for the video?
No, just to show it.
Okay.
All right. So 2 days traveling for 1 day in Helena, Montana, believe it or not. And here we are. And the repercussions of the 1 day in Helena will be reverberating through the universe for a long time. That's all I can tell you. Okay, so this is Diane Croft's page on newborn. It's really quite appropriate for the aftermath. Okay, so bring this child with you, her hair matted down. As if newborn, her bruised, red, shrunken head, misshaped by its passage through the birth canal, a trail of blood from her belly where she was attached, now cut apart with the thought that she could leave behind those odd parts that dried and fell off, that unsightly residue of her becoming. Bring this child with you, her hair matted and down. She loves you. And so Jordan has shown you the image of the newborn, and the caption is "The Newborn Christ," detail about 1645 to 1648 by Georges de la Tour, France, Musée des Beaux-Arts de Rennes, the York Project. And the quote here is from The Christian Archetype by Edward Edinger. The ego, as it accepts its vocation and destiny, has the love and support of the self. I'll say that once more. The ego, as it accepts its vocation and destiny, has the love and support of the self. And the commentary, newborn. Just before I started working on this commentary, I had a dream, and I rarely remember my dreams, that conveyed this idea. Being is dead, becoming is alive. So I'm focused on the phrase in this poem, the unsightly residue of the becoming. First, I wonder, what is the residue? What remains behind that we tend to discard in the aftermath of a birthing or transformation process? A strong image embedded in the poem is that of the placenta, and there are numerous references to the symbolic power of the placenta across cultures. Why, for instance, do cultures bury it, burn it, eat it? Think of it as the deceased twin, or plant it with a tree that can then grow alongside the child. And I'm surprised to learn that even though we in the Western world tend to cut the cord immediately after the baby is born, there is no medical reason for doing so. In fact, by not cutting it, the baby can more easily adapt to life outside the uterus. The poem tells me I must include those parts, those odd parts, those parts of myself that I consider unworthy, ugly, unsightly, no longer necessary, used up, dried up, depleted. At midlife, the twin shadow of the twin shadow self must be brought along. The shadow, when it is consciously and responsibly realized, can be a source of renewal, of rebirth. Only by awareness and acceptance of our weakness do we become conscious of something beyond the ego, which supports us. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell you. Good morning, Art. Nice to see you, and hello, Patrick. So this trip is just like that. And I have a rule in life, which I've expressed a few times, which is never trust anyone with a clean desk. And and if you look around my room a little bit, you'll see that it looks like not a atom bomb, but maybe a small explosion took place.
Yeah, if I flipped my camera, we'd be quite a pair.
Right. So I went out to Montana on Thursday to spend one day with my brother, Tim Holmes. And Tim and I have been interacting now for about 2 years. And I've long recognized him as my brother. And that started with the interview that I did of Tim in the fall of 2019, or what year are we in? Yeah, 2019, the fall of 2019. And this interview, which took 4 days for me to edit and get published because of a lot of problems, really analyzed me and Tim. And in that 4 days, I felt like I had lived 30 years with Tim. And I often talk about the episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation when Jean-Luc Picard has a small device that he's looking at that came from an alien race. And all of a sudden there's this flash and he gets flashbanged and he's on another planet. And it's like being newborn in this sense. He spends 30 years on this other planet and ends up having a wife and 3 children. And he learns to play the flute during this 30 years. And then, boom, he's back on the Enterprise, and only 30 seconds have actually passed. And he doesn't know how to tell the story or have anybody believe him that he lived 30 years on this other planet, but he can play the flute, and that's the proof that it's a true story. And so Friday, I spent the whole day with Tim, and in the evening from 7 to 9, I posed for Tim in the nude. And there are going to be some videos of that coming out. They'll be suitably fig leafed, I think. However, so in that, among other things, I explain why it is that I would travel from Annapolis, Maryland to Montana to have my portrait painted. And that was the main purpose of the trip. And, when you have an internationally known artist as a close friend, and he agrees to do your portrait, I mean, it's quite an honor, actually. And so it made complete sense. And I've had other portraits of me painted in Annapolis, but they're, we have portrait painters galore. People make a living at that. And Tim hasn't done so many portraits. He's done other things. His fame is in sculpture. But I wanted him to do my portrait because I know that he understands this material, and he understands what I'm talking about when I talk about, the portrait should express the inner man. And some of this, metaphorically, what Diane has said here really talks about to the sorts of things that were happening in this one day in Helena. It was sort of, I guess I arrived at 10:15 at night, and Tim and I didn't go to bed until like 2 a.m. And then we were up early and went at it until midnight. And then I had to be dropped off at the airport at 6 a.m. to come back. So it was quite an intense day, and or just over a day. But it was like going through the birth canal, because Tim has this remarkable studio building that had been built to house, quote unquote, wayward women in the 1890s. And this building is 7,000 square feet. It's immense. And Tim had, you can find on Tim's YouTube channel, Tim's tour of the building that he put together 2 or 3 years ago. And it's just seeing that tour is a remarkable thing, but actually living it and going there. Tim has one room where I was posing that's bigger than my apartment. and um, and he, but in this building, which is pretty immense, there's a basement with a 14-foot ceiling, and in there he has 280 sculptures in boxes, and he also has his entire metalworking shop where he can do anything in metalworking basically, and has all the tools for it. And of course it's a basement, so it's dusty and seems old and so on, and he has a crane in it, and you can actually drive a truck down into this basement and lift the sculptures onto the truck to drive away. And I'm not sure whether, to give you a sense of it, let me just check my photos for a minute. I'm not sure they came across to my computer. So, yes, okay. So I'm just going to, because it was such an experience of being newborn, I want to share this with you because it's right on point. Okay, so first of all, how do I do this? So I'm going to share my screen. So here is Tim and Skip Confrere, and after a long day, maybe I don't remember when I actually took this, but it was let's see, it was 10:22 p.m. So we 10 almost 11 o'clock p.m. So we had our day, and you can see I'm a little disheveled from the day, and then I'll just give you a sense of one of Tim's amazing sculptures, which he was commissioned to do for the arrival of the Pope. What's going on here? Okay. The arrival of the Pope to the Cathedral of San Francisco, and for reasons passing understanding, let's pull this one up. For reasons passing understanding, after Tim built this sculpture, they never used it. And so he had this wonderful sculpture that he put up in Helena. And I'm going to share my screen again now. Here it comes. And this is at his church in Helena, Montana. And it's called Who Gives All Gifts. And I'm going to show you the inscription in it in a second. Let's see. So as soon as I can figure out how to show the inscription. So just for scale, this is Tim next to the sculpture, which I think he said if it was a stretched out human being would be about 9 feet tall. And this is all bronze. This is bronze sculpture. So it would, what Tim says is it will last for 500 years. And so
and bronze doesn't rot and bronze doesn't crack, and it doesn't expand and contract more than minimally. It's the perfect sculpture.
Right. So here's the
material.
Here's the inscription next to the church now, where it sits in Helena. And Tim was the sculptor, and it was in memory of his parents. His father was the pastor of this church. It reads in memory of Reverend Bob and Polly Holmes, and in honor of those who give of themselves to their community in courage and compassion. Wonderful expression. And just to give you a sense of how they did that, Tim took me into the, okay, are you seeing this now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he took me into the state capitol building in Helena, and this is the first women elected to the legislature of the state of Montana. And right here, the fifth one down in the second column is Polly Holmes, who's Tim's mother. And so it's just for instance. And let's see, what else do I want to actually show you? I think you probably got a whiff of my anyway. This is as I was leaving Helena yesterday morning, and Tim's right in the midst of the Rockies. And I think I probably did not take, well, I want to share with you this. This is the Cathedral of Helena, and it has these amazing stained glass windows that were actually built in Germany before World War I. And they had to wait, but it has this incredible organ, this cathedral. And then let's see if I can, here's a sense of it. Here's people on a tour of the cathedral. It's quite impressive. And then Helen is a small town, so literally right across the street from that is Tim's church, and right across from that is the art gallery. And I'm not going to go too much farther into it, but here's one thing that might be of interest to people, which is this is in front of the state capitol building, and all these flags are Native American nations. These are the flags of the Native American nations of Montana, beside the American flag, of course, and I guess they have a POW flag there, and so on. So it's quite amazing. And as you see, Helena is a small town. You can see forever right from the state capitol. And show this from one other position. Tim said there are 14 castings in this statue, and each of these hair strands is a separate casting. Now, how you put that together, I don't know, but
Well, I was going to ask about that because besides recumbent angles, but not only high relief but full surround. I was curious how he did that. That's quite a feat, and I have to say, just especially with this view, and I really got a hit when you had Tim with his hand on the foot. It really felt like you, a whirlwind trip, and like over a day went to Meudon, Rodin's yard in Paris. It felt, I mean, because Tim's sculptures, every time I see them, I am transported back to Meudon when I was there, and all the unfinished sculptures and the scratched rocks and the pieces that are finished. There's just in it. I don't think any of his sculptures look like a Rodin, but it feels like Rodin's brother. I mean, there's just such a genetic similarity of this moving kind of presence of these pieces. They're not just an object.
Right. And I'm not going to show this movie, but you get a little whiff here of my session of posing. I'll show it a little later, or in a few days. I have some editing to do on it, but it'll be every everyone will find it interesting.
Mhm.
I'm quite sure. And Tim also recorded it and took other angles, so I haven't seen the angle that he took.
I really appreciate how your experience was such the numinous brotherhood that, you know, when you finished the poem from Diane, all I felt was, I hope that they didn't cut the placenta off too soon, because it felt like that was the first rite of passage.
Yeah.
And if the placenta comes out still connected to the baby, once the afterbirth slips and comes out, the baby had that kind of Linus blanket that to familiarize and stay nourished until acclimated. And then, of course, that comes up in her piece. But the maturation, the individuation starts there. And the first piece is the shedding of the placenta skin. And I always like to say, the snake, its skin shedded, the snake, its skin not missed, because you do move on. So your story with Tim was just such a beautiful dovetail into this.
Well, so then, yes, absolutely. And so going back to never trust anyone with a clean desk, Tim has 7,000 square feet
of an unclean desk.
And well, he does have a very attractive and clean gallery in the front office. But the rest of the building has artworks everywhere. There's at least 5,000 drawings and paintings stretched through that building, not to mention the 280 sculptures that are in the basement. So it's quite a place, and if you're a fan of art, I don't think that Tim would show. I don't think he would show his studio in its current condition with all this art. I mean, yesterday was his 66th birthday, and he has been doing art for 56 years. And so there's a lot of art there. A lot. Mm-hmm. I said to Tim, oh my God, God help the person that has to clean this up after you're gone.
Well, it sounds like a full and bursting seed pod, or even a artwork singularity. Like one spoonful of star material would weigh more than the earth, and his studio is that.
Yeah, incredible. And so here's a word for going to have your portrait painted by Tim Holmes and doing it in his home environs. It just is an incredible experience. And I don't know when the portrait that is actually intended for my family when it will emerge, because I told Tim I didn't want to see it or any of the drawings, but he did, I would guess, at least 15 full-blown charcoal drawings of me during this one day, and then we did this nude posing section, and we've decided to do it as a ritual. So a year from now, I'm going to go back and have him do another portrait. But this is the first one, and it's a lot of exciting things are going to come out of it, I think. And we have a project together, but we're keeping that to ourselves for the time being. And so we've done being newborn. So Tim and I are reborn after this one day together, and
It does feel like a rite of like another rite of passage into like a milestone in a moment in this weekend.
Well, yeah, it is a milestone in the moment. There's no doubt about it. And, I've had a rich and full life. Nobody can deny me that. Um, but it's going to have another phase now that's quite different, or not quite different, but it basically is the same thing. And we had a lot of conversation on this day about the experiences of T.E. Lawrence from Seven Pillars of Wisdom. And for his birthday, I mean, Tim, at Christmas time, Tim had sent me a Christmas gift, and I opened it up, and here's what it is. It's a book, and it's actually the congressional record, and Tim had drawn all through this book. So that was his gift to me at Christmas of last year, and it's basically the eulogies of 3 congressmen in this book, but it's a hardbound copy of the congressional record. And Tim renamed this. He did all these paintings in it, our charcoal drawings, and he called it Storm Stories. And so when I had called Tim to do the portrait, I said, there is a portrait that I've always admired, and it's a portrait of T.E. Lawrence. And let me see if I can show that, because I do have it here. Just a moment.
Well, this to me again is reminiscent of the snake, where you said, you're still you, but it's a whole new phase of life where after the snake has shed the skin, look at all the splendor of the refreshed and pretty colors, because it took a big serious turn basically. And I guess the quote that comes to mind is Alan Watts, that you have no responsibility to be who you were even 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. And
then Joan Didion said, I have lost touch with several people I have already been.
Yeah, right. Something like that. But so when I was first talking to Tim about this project, I was thinking about this portrait of T.E. Lawrence. Of course, he's famous as Lawrence of Arabia, but this is his book that I had read 30 years ago, The 7 Pillars of Wisdom. And at the time, I had said to myself, oh my God, I've lived this. I've had these same experiences. And
right.
And so I mentioned that to Tim, but then I said, wow, how could I be so inflated to say something like that? And here's another portrait of T.E. Lawrence that appears in the Tate Museum in London. Whoops, I didn't bring it up, I guess. There we go. Stop share.
Well, to give you a little street cred on not being inflated, it's like, just like at 1991 to 1993, you and I both, different ages, have the same, I better not tell anybody about these things I'm experiencing inside. They'll think I'm crazy. Am I dissolving? Am I going insane? Right. And then, 10, 15 years later, you're reading Jung and he had the same thing. So it feels to me, from just the visceral beauty that you've been sharing here, that I don't find it to be inflation. I think you're walking bigger, like you expanded even more.
Well, so I showed Tim these portraits of T. Lawrence, which I've always admired. And it turned out that Lawrence had an artist named Augustus John who had started to paint him at length, maybe in 1916 or 1917, and had done many paintings. So one of the interesting things to do is to go on Wikipedia and look up T.E. Lawrence portraits, and you'll just see this guy's experience. And so then my Pennsylvania Dutch ancestors, and so one of the reasons that I apply myself to Lawrence is that I too did a lot of work in Saudi Arabia for 11 years, and I too wore Saudi garb, so I had an entire wardrobe of Saudi clothes. And so then my Pennsylvania Dutch ancestors, who don't believe in buttons, started to argue with me. And they said, whoa, you can't be that prideful, and so on. And finally I decided, after listening to this argument in my head for the last 8 weeks or so, I said, okay, I'm going to take away all my personas, and I have a few. I'm going to take away all my personas, and I'm going to wait a minute. Maybe I can show you a couple just for fun here.
I appreciate that you're doing this.
I'm going to take away all my personas, and all right, so here's one of them. All right, so there's a persona. Okay, that's me as a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps. And so I have lots of gewgaws like Lawrence did. I mean, Lawrence went from being a first lieutenant in the British Army to being a colonel in the British Army. Where's this?
It's like you have a beautiful pottery collection of egos. I mean, that many potent, intense vessels that are wonderful containments.
There's Conover, Arabia.
Conover, Arabia.
It was taken in 2013 in Riyadh. And that's not even that's only the everyday dress that I was wearing there. But, in terms of doing this portrait, which I really want for my family, I said, how do I choose? Because I've been these many things. I mean, I am a retired Marine lieutenant colonel, but I don't want to define myself as that, because that was the active part of that was 23 years of my 75 years. And so it doesn't really express me. And, the Arab garb that I wore for 11 years. So actually my experience in Arabia was greater than Lawrence's in terms of expanse of time. But it was 11 years, and it was quite concentrated. And it in no way says anything about what I've been doing here for the last 34 years since I've been doing Jungian stuff, and 11 since I've been doing website stuff and so on. And so I said, okay, so what I'm going to do in Helena, among other things, is I'm going to pose nude for Tim, because I'm going to take off all of my personas and take away all of my veils and say, okay, here's who I am. And then see what happens. And so that's what I did. And it was a very interesting experience, which Tim and I will be publishing in part.
Well, to celebrate that, I think I'll give you two small pieces. One, a tarot reference, the star. There's the concept of the nudity of the star. And people always kind of quizzle, well, what does that mean? The star requires no veils.
Yeah.
It is what it is, traveling across millions of light years kind of thing. And then I think one of the more, I guess it's a little bit humorous, but it's not tongue in cheek, out of my book, you are no more at the mercy of your past than you are of old photo albums. Make more pictures. And I think you this weekend you started making more pictures.
Right. So anyway, having actually slept in Tim's studio for 2 nights and spent one full day there, and I probably total amount of sleep I got in Helena, Montana was maybe 4 hours in that period of time. It feels like I came through the birth canal. It really does.
I won't say you look like it.
No. With all of Diane's description here. So I'm going to read her poem one more time, for emphasis, right? Bring this child with you, her hair matted down, as if newborn, her bruised, red, shrunken head, misshaped by its passage through the birth canal, a trail of blood from her belly where she was attached, now cut apart with the thought that she could leave behind those odd parts that dried and fell off, the unsightly residue of her becoming. Bring this child with you, her hair matted and down. She loves you. Okay, so anyway, as I said, Tim and I are brothers, and
well, in rite of passage, the child gives birth to the parent of the man or the woman, and it feels like this weekend, just from an outside perspective, and this is maybe presumptuous, but maybe it lands you and Tim as brothers from another mother, kind of thing.
Right.
Birthed new men.
Yeah. Okay, so where was I here on Jerry? I guess I have so I'm going to go back to the Jerry Wright reading, and that's the Mystical Path Less Travel, which Jordan has. And I'm going to go to chapter 2. And
page 43, correct?
Yeah, page 43. Or let's see, do I want to read all this? Yes, I do. Okay. So a mystical path less traveled. Since the words mystic and mystical likely evoke powerful emotions, images, and associations, it is imperative that I begin by clarifying my own usage of the terms. Clarifying is not synonymous with defining, however. Each of the words above denotes some form of lived experiences that resist the tight confines of definition. Such experiences can be described. Description allows the experiences to continue to breathe, to continue to live. Unfortunately, over the centuries, mystics have not been granted much breathing room. Mystics have generally been marginalized by religious authorities who feel a threat to their power to determine what is holy and who can pronounce words to make it so. Many religious mystics have been deemed heretics. Others have suffered death. Mystics in other disciplines like science and the arts are often suspect as well, at least until their genius can be recognized by later generations. Copernicus and Galileo come to mind. Mystics are often considered to be strange, unusual, and odd, at least by collective norms or values. They are often dismissed as unrealistic, ungrounded, unscientific, fuzzy-minded and more inclined toward a spiritual otherworld than this one. Well, I've been called unrealistic, unscientific, fuzzy-minded, or, all those things apply to me, surely.
Preaching to my choir.
Yeah, my use of the words mystic and mystical, however, seeks to reverse these historical prejudices by normalizing and universalizing these experiences deemed mystical. Mystics are not a special kind of people who have unusual spiritual experiences. Rather, all people have experiences that they do not create, can't control, or command to repeat. Many of those experiences are so normal that they do not register on the traditional mystical scale, yet on reflection, they are great mysteries. From a depth psychological perspective, to be alive and to be aware of aliveness is a great mystery that qualifies as mystical. The next breath and the next heartbeat that come unbidden, the next emotion, thought, inspiration, or dread that overtake us register on the psychological mystical scale. Widening the mystical lens, where does love come from, or joy, or depression, and where do they go when they leave? How do we stand upright while our planet spins at 1,000 miles an hour and rotates around the sun at a staggering 65,000 miles per hour? Where were we before being birthed, and where do we go after our last breath? In short, life itself is a great mystery, and to be a conscious part of that, of life, a greater mystery still. The whole of life is a mystical path. That is, if we pay attention, more poetically, in the words of Elizabeth Barrett Browning, earth's crammed with heaven. This is earth with apostrophe S, so as possessive. Earth's crammed with heaven, or not possessive. It's an abbreviation for earth is. So earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God, but only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit around it and pluck blackberries and daub their natural faces, unaware. I didn't read that poem very well, but that's Browning's poem. In his mystical classic, The Idea of the Holy, Rudolf Otto was concerned that the word holy had become too one-sidedly light, bright, and sanitized. He thought that holy had come to mean completely good. He created a more encompassing word, numinous, which expresses a wide range of human experiences and emotions that accompany what he referred to as creature consciousness. For the Latin words numen, a god, and nuer, to nod, a numinous experience is likened to a nod from the gods that beckons reciprocal nod from us human creatures. In short, creature consciousness refers to the human experience of being in the presence of an inexpressible mystery. A numinous experience may leave one trembling or shuddering in the presence of what Otto called the mysterium tremendum and what our early ancestors called demonic dread. On the other hand, an experience of the numinous may leave one with a sense of awe, delight, peace, or tranquility. The experience may be sudden and momentary, or may last hours, days, or even longer. Numinous experiences are felt in the body and with intense emotion. A bodily response and an intense emotion become the alerts that one is in presence of the holy, in the presence of an inexpressible mystery. Psychologically, those twin alerts denote an experience of an archetype. Numinous experiences of the mysteries of the heart of life are common to all and rather continuous. A mystic is one who, with creative consciousness, notices the nod from the gods, who sees and takes off his shoes, and who metaphorically nods in return. Otto noted that numinous experiences are the foundation of all forms of mysticism, the consciousness of the littleness of every creature in the face of that which is above all creatures. Psychologically speaking, the evolutionary gift of consciousness, the capacity to stand beside ourselves and reflect simultaneously on visible outer and invisible inner reality, makes us as a species of mystics. Our sixth sense is a mystical capacity that is common to all. We differ in the value we grant it and the energy we grant its development. The exercise of the mystical gift of consciousness may well determine the length and quality of our stay on Earth as a species. At present, we have earned the reputation for being nature's most creative, most destructive species. Our mother stands us to exercise our mystical sensibilities more than ever. Drawing on the mystical traditions from numerous world religions, on the discoveries of modern science, and on the analytical psychology of Carl Jung, I am proposing a psychological mysticism that preceded and now replaces the historical theological mysticism that has been dependent on theistic images of God. Such images are no longer meaningful for many or necessary. These pages explore a spiritual path that has the character of a grounded embodied mysticism that places the heavenly disembodied escapism that has dominated the religious collective for more than 4,000 years. That's that reading. If you want to comment on that.
Especially Elizabeth Barrett Browning's words, earth's crammed with heaven. It reminds me of, Blake's eternity and moment, heaven in a grain of sand. And she goes into a more visceral, I think, poetic living expression of that same concept, but both of them, I think, driving at the same thing. With that eternity in a moment, heaven in a grain of sand, and then earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. There's the life, the arrows in that bush, but only he who sees takes off his shoes, i.e., touching the earth. The rest sit around it and pluck blackberries and daub their natural faces unaware.
I love that. And the rest of around are big blackbirds.
Yeah, I just like that's sarcasm. It's not mean. It's true though. It's the rest sit around it and pluck blackberries. I mean, it's like it's. I didn't see how funny it was the first time, and now at first it was. Now, yeah, it is. That's pretty actually hilarious.
So I've done a lot with art over the years. And let me see if I can show you a couple of things that, let's see. I'm not going to really show my true art, but what I want to, or most of it anyway, because some of it is fairly raunchy.
It's alive in a more personal way.
Yes. And let's see. Okay. Well, let's say an artist knows he's arrived when his art is stolen. And so I actually had a piece of my art stolen. once, if it's here. I'm trying to get it onto the screen right now. And come on. All right. So here's me with the newspaper article about my stolen art. There it is. And some of my art, for a few years, I was putting it in the bathrooms of a local coffee shop. And so this is the story about it. And
that's a beautiful way to get people to linger with it.
Right. And here you can see a piece of my art behind, and that piece, I have a friend who is a sex therapist. She's literally written a book. She wrote a book called Marriage, the True Story, I think. And good evening, Yuan. Nice to see you today. Sadly, you've missed all the juicy stuff, but because you've just arrived, I'll show you this article one more time. So this is a piece of my artwork, and this particular painting was a painting that I gave to a woman who is a sex therapist, and she wrote a book called Marriage, the True Story. And one night she invited me out for dinner. She wanted to talk to me. And so I arrive at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse here in Annapolis, and she drives up in a red Porsche, which I think was paid for by this book that she wrote, which was a bestseller. But there were a couple of paintings in that series, and I made a gift of those to her, and I believe they now hang in her house. But the point I wanted to make was that on April the 9th, 2005, I did a show of my artwork, and it was a black and white show. So we all dressed in tuxedos and black dresses, long black dresses, and still trying to find a picture of me with,
Skip, your theft reminds me, a friend of mine, just in a frenzy, called me once. It's like, Jordan, has anyone ever stolen your work? I'm like, oh, sure. It's an honor, don't you think? And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, look, if someone thinks your work is so good that they're actually going to break the law to get it, that's an honor. And I said, why don't you just wait 6 weeks? Was it writing or visual? And he said it was writing. I said, don't worry, just see if they can actually do anything with it, because it's yours. So let's see what happens. And within 6 weeks on his blog, there were comments. Isn't this from so-and-so's book? What, shouldn't you have quoted this and cited this? And it just took a little while to catch fire, but it was one of those, just be honored, because someone loved your work enough to steal it. They couldn't even wait to purchase it. I mean, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I guess this painting can be shown because it obfuscates, but just to give a sense of the paintings that I was doing, there's one. And it's a reference to the shadow, of course. And and I'm not.
That's powerful.
I'm not going to say anything more about it, but in any case,
well, that functions as quite a dense symbol. The plate that disintegrates into her and emanates out of her, the hand that comes out of the dark into her, going back out of her. I mean, that's a that is an Atman, a female Atman, the smaller than small and larger than large. That's a wonderful confluence place of that whole concept.
Right. So anyway, I had a lot of these paintings that were black and white like that. And so I did a show of these paintings 3 times in 2005. The shows themselves were works of art. Okay. And they were quite numinous. I wasn't sure whether I was going to get burned at the stake for doing this show.
As long as it's at Ruth Chris stake, you're fine.
Well, yeah, no, it was
I know.
at our local hotel.
I just mean the burned
right.
part. That was just a bad joke. So,
but anyway, that was probably I did one painting of the word Allah in Arabic. And so I have a picture of myself that I was looking for of me with Jean Shinoda-Bolen, who is a very famous Jungian analyst, in front of my Allah painting. And I was looking for it, but I couldn't find it quickly here. But, the point I made on April the 9th, 2005 was that the show itself was a work of art, and only those who were present could appreciate the numinosity and the significance of the show. And obviously, as I say, the images were quite explicit, and so I didn't know whether I would be a mistake. But what happened was people, and it was an adults only exhibit, and I don't know whether it's because I made wine available for the evening for free, or something else, but I think it's something else, and it's very, very deep. But within 30 minutes, the atmosphere in the exhibit was euphoria, total euphoria. And and I sold enough works of art that night to cover the cost of it, which was a good thing.
Well, I will say, in regards to that larger, or it's bigger thing, I saw your painting that was black and white, of the woman. A lot of it implied, so that you get the negative space that really works as part of the form, which is a nice contrast and syzygy kind of Jungian connection. But then that piece you just showed also, I think really what there is it's not pornographic, and it's not the nudity of showing body parts. I think there's a naked soul quality in those images, a very both and I think the naked soul, then you said, within 30 minutes, numinous objects in a numinous cup with people poured into it, and there's euphoria. It's like you could touch them deep within. It felt like.
I'm just going to show this because Ioana's here and she won't be able to see it if I leave it, if I don't show it through. If I don't show it through Zoom, she won't be able to see it. So I'll just show this piece briefly.
That one.
But this piece is called Numinous Boundary: From the Mundane to the Sublime. And it's, as you see, I painted it in 2004. And
I don't want to be.
You can imagine what the boundary is here. Okay.
So. I don't want to be misheard. I don't want to think people think I'm calling women snakes. But the image here I just saw with her white clothing being shed, it's very much her emerging from her skin, and that shadow coming out that is so alive. And then they're both there together. She really is. That's a molting there also, which is an emergence of the pure.
Right. And so again, here, this piece, which I don't think I've ever shown on YouTube, is an extremely intense piece. I'm not seeing why it's not coming up properly.
There it is.
There it is. Okay, so you can see that that it's very evocative, and yet it's black and white. And,
that's her lover.
Yeah.
There's the direct switcheroo. That's her lover. I mean, those two. If I could, I would put both of those right side by side, and I would alternately move them so that they're facing and facing away. I mean, that's
just imagine if you're
30 of those
in a large room, and I don't know, there were at least 30. Might have been 50 paintings in that show, and so you come in, and that's the evocation that you see. And so
I went straight to experience. I didn't go into polysyllabic New York Times art review. I went straight to experiential with those. I mean, it needed no words. There wasn't even a yes. I was already stepped in as I saw it. So that's a real immersion.
I didn't sell that painting, but I sold the numinous boundary, and a few years later I offered to buy it back from my friend who had purchased it, and she says, "No way."
That's
okay. So anyway, the point was that night was in itself was a work of art, and so this day with Tim was certainly a work of art, but also the posing nude session was a numinous work of art in its own right. And over the next couple 3 weeks, maybe you'll start to get an appreciation for that as I pull some things together. And by the way, this isn't an advertisement for Adonis posing or anything like that. It's strictly head and shoulders. The video I took was strictly head and shoulders, so it's no more nude than you see at the beach.
Right.
But what's significant is what we were talking about and how we presented this to Tim's students. And so again, the event itself was a work of art, and only those who were present can appreciate what it was. And
how many were in the room, including you and Tim?
That's our secret.
Okay. No, fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm not going to identify the audience in any way, including whether
Quantity.
they were men or women or what else, anything else about them, and they are not pictured in our video. They are anonymous, but
that's more than fair. Simply because it's your decision. That makes it okay.
Right, that makes it okay.
This isn't a negotiation. Yeah, it's like so you can stop wasting your breath. Yeah,
right. But anyway,
I get
it. Anyway, after I did 3 shows in 2005, I didn't touch my paints for 14 years. I didn't do another painting until 2019 when I
really.
Yeah,
that's my same timeline again. It stopped, and wow. Okay.
Yeah,
that's a synchronicity.
So, anyway, let's see what we're talking about here. So Patrick says, "Congrats,
wow.
Skip, you have officially made it. I don't know what I've made." And Patrick says there's going to be copycat Banksy art this summer. Maybe somebody's gonna have to make me cough up the other 50 paintings. But all the paintings in that show were black and white. And Mistel says, is there a place to view your collection at more leisure and length? In my storage class at public storage, yeah. People who think nudity is vulgar have something to hide, in my opinion. Well, surely.
Well, Skip, you kind of sparked me. I had to just run over to a side table I have that.
Oh, wow, yeah. That's sort of the same sort of genre.
And that was the last piece I did.
Uh-huh.
And so it's interesting that, yeah, the same sort of, it just sparked it. That kind of language, the black and white, the implied, the negative space that's formed. So
why don't we appreciate the value of rich with experience more? Good question. You know, it took a lot to do that show. I'm 75 years old, so for me to travel across the country to Montana, and the travel time was 2 days, and the time in Montana was 1 day. You know, quite honestly, this morning I feel like I've been driven over by a truck. But as I said, if you have an opportunity to have your portrait painted by Tim Holmes, you should do it, no matter what it takes. And it would be an experience that you would never forget. I think Tim should probably start charging, I don't know, $500 a night to stay in his studio as part of his price of the portrait.
Yeah, for the complete and immersed experience.
Yeah, precisely. Because I mean, there are just not words to describe it. And oh my goodness. Anyway, we'll have a lot more to say. I think Tim and I will both have a lot more to say about it.
And did you want to keep this one truncated? Keep this one today short?
Yeah. Okay. So I did want to. So thank you for reminding me. But so let's do one more. We've only gotten through one page of Diane's work. So let's see what the next one is. And the next one is cornucopia. Okay. Very apropos, I think. We'll talk about that. So break open my side seam where I was sewn by hand. Let the contents fall out upon the table piece by piece until all that remains is the shell and a pile of what was inside, now showing itself to the world. Let each passerby whisper about the strange composition of forms and whether they will ever fit back inside such a small, insignificant body. And then the quote, the caption here is Corne d'Abondance, 1765, by Jean-Baptiste Pigalle, French sculptor, statue, Louis XV, Royal Palace of Reims, photo by Vassal, 2007.
That's really, when I was at Reims, I didn't, I wish I would have seen that.
Yeah. Okay. So the quote from The Enlightened Heart by Stephen Mitchell. The golden god, the self, the immortal swan, leaves the small nest of the body, goes where he wants. That's a quote from the Upanishads, 8th to 5th century BCE. And then Diane's commentary. Cornucopia. What a quirky poem. Something is spilling out, the contents of which are strangely provocative. It causes people to whisper. In Edinger's lectures on Jung's Mysterium Conjunctionis, I found one possible explanation. Quote, this is the stuff that's been left out, the despised and rejected body that the spirit and the soul have cast off. Psychologically, that residue will be concrete reality, particularly the most personal and the particular and individual stuff, egohood in its lowest and most despised form. This is to say that what has now been released for public viewing is the strange composition of forms that makes me, uniquely anyone else. The process of individuation instigates a brutal reassessment of these despised parts. Why should that be? Because until we accept the psychic fact that each of us carries the opposites within, good and evil, feminine and masculine, grace and awkwardness, intelligence and stupidity, we either repress or project our despised parts onto others. If we don't acknowledge these strange forms that hide in the dark corners of our personality, they take on a life of their own. In other words, the primordial psyche must be transformed and humanized through the efforts of ego consciousness. The instinctual drives, thus transformed and matured, cease to be sources of moral danger, temptation, or sin. Instead, they become the originators of new creative impulses and possibly the expression which eventually widen the scope of the personality and with it the whole life. As for the nattering of passersby, says Jung, no small difficulties stand in the way of finding and recognizing the transformed value. It doesn't look holy, it looks human. Jordan?
Yeah, as for the nattering of passersby, those who pluck blueberries only, is a nice connection. And I think also the way I like to put it is pretty doesn't cut it, because pretty is contrite, contrived, and symmetrical. Beauty has quirks and weirdnesses because beauty is alive. And that's this, I think, this particularly uniquely you self that she's describing here through the poem and the picture image and the quote and the passage. The unique presence. I mean, your life, your way. It doesn't matter if it's 0.0009% difference from the rest of the world, and that's it. But it's enough that cascades through your system, so that, for example, when you molt, when you shed these personas and molted them, there's a presentation of the beauty that's, Skip Conover. And it doesn't matter if it's pretty, it's beautiful in the fact that it's living. And then you are the most cherished being on the planet, along with everyone else who has theirs as well inside.
And Donald Kalsched, who wrote the book Trauma and the Soul, gave a talk at Pacifica Graduate Institute, which you can find on YouTube. And at the end of this 1 hour talk, he just said this, that like a rabbi that lived 2,000 years ago, I come to give life in abundance. Okay. And so that I wanted to figure out where that came from. And it came from John 10:10 in the Bible. And it's words from Christ. The thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. So
Mm.
that's what his reference was in that. But the point is of me showing some of my, or discarding some of my veils, so that others may live their lives more abundantly.
Well, John 10:10 there, what comes to mind is an egg hatching. Because, I mean, if you crack an egg from the outside, life stops.
Yeah.
But if the egg breaks open from the inside, life begins. And there's that the Christ kind of thing emanating from within to emerge into abundance, to emerge as birthing life in the metaphorically in that passage in John 10:10.
Right. So Wright says in his book, now if we go back to Mystical Path Less Traveled, and we're just going through these passages randomly. So the interesting synchronicity that they should be coming today in this session where we're talking about these things, it's quite interesting. So Wright has a poem here called "We Are Born Mystics," but I promised Jerry I would not read any of his poetry. So it's a 2-page poem. I urge you to buy the book and and read his poetry.
Worth it.
Right. And so, but I'll go to the journal entry, which next follows, and then that'll be all for today because it's Mother's Day. And if you're spending your time watching two
old fat men,
old white men talk about this stuff instead of taking care of your mother, then
your priorities are not anywhere near where and if you don't buy it, then you're just going to be paying for it for a little more than a day or two.
Okay, so here's Jerry's journal entry. Journal. God was an experience, a mystical experience, long before he became a he, and longer still before becoming a team mascot for competing tribes. We were mystics long before the birth of theistic religions and long before monotheistic religions reduced the multitude of mysterious presences and powers to one. Patriarchal and hierarchical religions have overshadowed our original mystical experiences. It is time for mystics to come out of the closets to claim our spiritual birthright. And that's exactly what Tim and I were talking about, which is that most people live lives of quiet desperation. And we're about coming up with some spiritual experiences that are numinous and that you can experience in this lifetime that are quite real. And there's no doubt that God was overseeing our experience in the last 36 hours, and I can say that to you, but it's you also have to experience it. And a lot of Tim's work is spiritual in nature, as you saw at the beginning. Who gives all gifts is the name of the piece that was at his church. And
what comes to mind in that is with you're a mystic, I'm a mystic, but for the general population who have not come to realize their own mystic, that with all of the media that everyone's bombarded with, it's like a bunch of dead leaves. I mean, if you don't read the paper, you're uninformed. If you do, you're misinformed. And it's just a bunch of info chatter of sound bites that, to me, you have to almost sweep these dead leaves off to then look down and go, oh gosh, the grass of my mystic is yellow. I better water it and keep these leaves off. And so the ability to see through lies in the media, so to speak, and then see things like this instead. Fill yourself with these sculptures like Tim's right there, that connect us one to ourselves, and then once that plug-in's present, even more so to one another. That's just such a powerful piece with him holding the ankle.
So, so as I said, a lot of Tim's work is quite spiritual in nature.
Can you show that piece one more time?
Yeah.
I had a different hit on it this time, which was more robust. The one where he's holding the ankle, if you would.
Okay.
The tension of the balance here, not only is he being given to and receiving, it also feels like with one hand, he is effortlessly lifting this presence up.
Yeah.
You know, to sit on that ledge, that temple ledge, so that there's an anti-gravity piece where I feel like this, I mean, that's a syzygy. There's this binary star orbit between Tim and it's not his logos sculpture. It's this sculpture that still has arrows. The way the gestures there, that's two life forms I find in orbit, Tim and the sculpture. That image right there is such a binary star system, such a syzygy, such paired opposites that are in family together. That picture in itself is, and then even if I look at the handrail coming down from a compositional piece, look at this trinity. You know, the grasping passage of the unseen Holy Ghost railing, and then Tim, and then the sculpture. There's this picture, and the bench kind of it's neither here nor there, but that just a photograph is such a powerful presentation of both Tim, the sculpture, and then this mystical experience, I think, in general altogether. Yeah. That's quite a photo.
Yes. Yes, it is. And I guess I didn't really take any pictures in Tim's studio per se. I mean, you could see a little sense of it here,
right?
Where these are some of his paintings.
You can tell it's kind of capacious. It's wide open.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, this room in which we were doing this is as big as my entire apartment.
Well, and it's interesting too, you know, the modern studio, and then he has the roses, you know, on the casing trim at the corners, you know, the little circles. I mean, it's very much period, turn of the century trim, which is nice to see in a place like that. It gives it some life, some.
Yeah. So Patrick's Hollywood says, Skip, you are probably one of the top 3 people, if not the top most interesting person I know. And I said, Patrick, you don't know the half of it yet. Not even the 20% of it.
Well, I don't impress easily, and I'm here. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
You know. So I mean, I can be a little jaded, but this is powerful, dense, fun, frankly.
Yeah. So you and I put on the YouTube channel, but I haven't put in this chat, which I'll put on for you, the link to Tim's website. And, you know, if you want to have a sense of, I think that worked. Didn't create a link for some reason. Just a minute. Yeah, and Yuan says has something in common to your art. Yeah, absolutely. Because
Mhm.
Tim and I were both, as young people, very impressed by the work of Auguste Rodin. And
Right.
as you see Tim's huge sculpture now, you
I remember at Moudon when I first encountered a Rodin up close in person, and just 3 words, I got it.
yeah,
Up to that point, it was architecture and composition and trying to make it pretty. And then I went, oh, no, no, no. It's more difficult than that and more easy. It's how to create life.
yeah. Since I just put it up on my own screen, I'm just going to screen share for a moment Tim's website, because Patrick, this was, can't tell now because I'm not looking at the YouTube chat, but somebody said, whoa, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
And so I just want to give a short tour here, because Tim's website is just an amazing experience, an amazing thing to see. And if you're lucky, you'll find the video of his studio tour. I think might be here. But this is his studio over here. And so there it is, his historic tour. And so I clicked on it and it says this is age restricted. Yeah, no kidding. So
yeah, only available on YouTube.
If you do know nothing else, go to stories and see who Tim is with, because for here example, he's with Desmond Tutu, and of course Hillary Rodham Clinton and Rosalind Carter. And this is the China Peace Prize, which is the piece that Tim designed, which if you look at it in one direction, it looks like you can't actually see it here, because in one direction, it looks like a human being showing peace. And in the other direction, it's actually the Chinese character for peace, which is quite remarkable. And here you see Jimmy Carter with one of his pieces. And let's see if I can, there's one other I'll show, because I actually did buy one of Tim's pieces. Yeah, this piece, I bought this piece and gave it to my daughter for her birthday this year. My daughter is quite a religious person, and the original of this piece was created for the Archbishop of Palestine, and that's this gentleman, Elias Chakor, and it actually depicts a historic event, which Tim describes here in this story, where when this young priest went into his first church in Palestine, and the sexton or the head of the congregation or somebody came to him and said, you have to get rid of this vine. And the priest follows him outdoors and says, isn't it beautiful? That was a gift from our neighbor. And the head of the congregation says, well, he's a Muslim, and so that's a Muslim vine, and you have to get rid of it. And so he says, get me a bucket of water. And so the guy thinks he's going to loosen the soil to tear it up. And what Father Chakor did was he held out his hands and had the man pour the water over his hands. And he says, you know, I baptize thee in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And he says, now it's a Christian vine and it can stay.
Yeah, I love the third option. It's like, I'll tell you no, but I'm going to do it in a different way.
Yeah.
I'll play your game. Here are your rules. Thank you.
Right.
I love that story.
Right. And so I actually gave this Tim, when he does a commission piece, and this was he did in commission for the Tannenbaum Foundation. I think it's called the Tannenbaum Foundation. For this special occasion when they were honoring Archbishop Shakur as a peacemaker, he gets the right to do a limited edition of like 20, and so he also let's see, this is the Women's Peace Prize, because the UN decided that no, that's not a good example of it, unfortunately. Sorry. What have I done here? Okay. Anyway, it's worth going through that thing, because the UN decided that that there was no prize that recognized women, and so they commissioned Tim to do the Women's Peace Prize for the United Nations, and it's given every year to a remarkable woman, of course. And so on that website, you can see some of the incredible things that Tim has done and the people he's done artwork for. So if you want to memorialize yourself in either paint or bronze, I would recommend taking a look at that. And
well, one big thing about Tim's sculpture and paintings is, as an artist, titling can be tricky, and artist statements and intents can be trickier and superficial, and a lot of words that don't apply. But what I love is that Tim's titles are the heart of the matter, and the piece is also that, and that's as much the name Jordan for me or Skip for you, as his pieces are. The returning of the nails, or who now the title's escaping, but who gives all gifts. Who gives all gifts. That title as a name lives as a verb and not a noun. And I find that it's really where it's at. Mystic is a verb, not be mystic. It's mystic. It's an action. It's a living. So Tim's pieces they embody, I think, that.
Yeah. And, my point in part is that we all live in the mystery every day. I mean, I see it in almost everything that happens. But and Jerry Wright says it clearly in the introduction to his book. He says, he says on page 5 of his book, God is being itself, life itself, in all its mystical mixture, and we are its human conduit. With such a perspective, life is a mystical path. Every step, every day, every moment, everywhere, and every when. And that sums it up. That's a numinous sentence for me. And so on that, I'm going to wish everybody a happy Mother's Day, and all mothers in the world a happy Mother's Day. And we'll do this again next week. Sometimes we don't get through too much of these books, so it will give us good fodder for the next few months. And I'm not sure Jordan is going to be able to keep joining us. Jordan is going to
I was just going to say next week I'll be here. I think then the following week I'll be on the road unless I do go the sleeper train route and the Wi-Fi is good enough. And then I may turn my thing so you just see the scenery passing by. Well,
oh, that'd be cool.
You know, so I'm not sure yet. I have the cabin. So there's a lot of things I didn't have to decide. And so right now it's finishing up with Lyra, my dog. That's a big piece this week. And I don't want to say that dispassionately, but just move stuff. Let's just say that. So next week I'll definitely be here. And then the following week we'll begin that 2 weeks in a row of potential variables, or, you know, on the fly, on the move. And hey, thanks for Wi-Fi.
Yeah. And then we'll see how committed you are, because after that you're going to be in mountain time. So this time frame will be 6 a.m., not 8.
Well, and the thing is, what's funny is I've never been a morning person, except when I was in Colorado and New Mexico. So something about the altitude, and I love being up really early. So yeah, we'll see how it pans out, because maybe I've changed since then. But yeah.
So Yuan, it's a pleasure to have you with us every time.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Glad you're here.
My pleasure.
And I hope you'll. Yuan's going to come to the United States for a graduate program, and at Pacifica, which I think is just remarkable and exciting and fun. But I hope you'll recruit a few more of your colleagues before you leave. So anyway.
Yeah, Red Rover, please come over.
Yeah, sure. So anyway, let us know how you're doing, and we look forward to meeting you in the future. So peace, everyone.
All right, everybody.
Happy Mother's Day. Go make sure they know their love.